I started stem sailing because I'm a pretty lucky guy. I grew up in Jersey City in a time and a place that was a very different city than it is today. It was a dangerous place. Drugs were all over the city. I was a product of my environment. I was there, and things weren't really good. A few years ago, I looked back at some of the people I knew. I realized that more than 20 guys who I knew all died before they were, 20 of them died before they were 24 years old. One guy got shot in the head. Others died of drug overdoses. Some died from AIDS, from drug-related AIDS. Some have gone to prison and then died from other crime work. It was a pretty tough place, and I was lucky I got through it. I was very blessed. I ended up being a highly successful businessman. And actually, after 9/11, my view of things really changed. My wife had an office in the first tower to collapse. She wasn't there, fortunately, but we went to funerals and wakes for body parts for months. Got me thinking about how lucky we were and how lucky I was. And I wanted to find a way to give back to the place that I grew up in. Because in many ways, I really loved that place. I still do. And I realized I love sailing. Out of 9/11, I developed my sailing skills. I became a licensed Coast Guard captain. I became an American Sailing Association instructor. I can use this as that vehicle to help kids in my old place. So I started stem sailing. And stem sailing, the idea is to get young people into a different place in their heads, to broaden their view of the universe a little bit. Getting them out on the water, seeing how boats work, seeing the bigger metropolitan areas, seeing how beautiful New York Harbor is, how large it is, how it's a universe in and unto itself. Also, sailboats were the state of the art in technology for a long time. Science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what sailboats were about for thousands of years. Look at boats today, you can see that historical development. And my thought was that if I share some of those with young people, they're going to get their schoolwork differently. They're going to say, wow, I can connect this to the real world. I can connect it to something that's fun, that's something that's practical, that's something that I want to know more about. And that's what stem sailing is meant to do. Talk about some science, some engineering, some math, but not in a hardcore way. It's enough that they get interested, that they see a value, and they see a context. So that's what we're doing. And we've started out modestly, and we have a winter program coming up that's going to have hopefully a half a dozen schools in it. We already have 2 that look firmly committed. The objective is to teach the children about sailing and the components of sailing and the science over the course of the winter so that they'll actually be prepared to go sailing next spring, summer, as opposed to trying to teach them about STEM and sailing in a short period of time. We're segmenting it into 2 programs. The first is the learning academic part, and we'll do once every 2 weeks. We'll have a classroom session for about an hour, and we'll show some sailing videos. We'll talk about basics of sailing. We'll practice making some knots. We'll talk about what jibing is and tacking is and how to heave to and all those basic technical stuff. And we'll put it in the context of some science and math. We'll talk about time, speed, and distance calculations, which are very important. That's really basic algebra. We'll talk about lift. Sails are foils. It's basic physics. We'll talk about the Venturi principle, more basic physics. Talk about Archimedes' principles, some really basic science, and some other things like that. And hopefully we'll get 20 or 30 or 40 children interested enough that they come every 2 weeks. They learn something. They interact with some kids that they go to school with in a way that they wouldn't have before. And by time the weather gets warmer next spring, summer, they'll be ready to go out on a sailboat and have some fun and see New York Harbor. If it just clicks, if once a year we click with a few kids and they say, you know what, this environment that I live in, this little universe that I live in, is just that. It's a little universe. It's not the total world. It's a world that I can expand out of. And what we'll be trying to instill at the same time is a belief in themselves. A belief that if they work hard, if they work smart, they can change their reality. They can change their future. I firmly believe that. I know it's true. It happens all the time. So that's the objective. That's the goal.